Hi, my name is Chris Parkhurst. I'm a documentary filmmaker, and I'm also the host of the Documentary Life podcast, a show that spans 140 episodes, has been downloaded in over 135 countries, and I've been producing for about 5 years. I decided to put each and every episode up here onto YouTube to sort of expand the audience, and as we say in the show, maybe inspire and inform some more doc filmmakers, hopefully like yourself. In the episodes, you may find some older, maybe outdated URLs, in particular, any of the documentary filmmaking courses that we do offer online. If you have any questions about the URLs, simply look in the show notes on this page, here on this YouTube page, and that'll be able to take you where you need to go to. Other than that, I hope you enjoy the show, and it's great to have another listener to the Documentary Life. Have a great day. Microphone check, 1, 2, 3. City, sibilance. Levels check, good, sounds good. 1, 2, 3, rolling and...
Right from the beginning, I think one of the things which is key to my passion about documentary is the contrast. You dive into the life of other people, and it has nothing to do with yourself, nothing to do with your own character, with your own background. It's completely irrelevant who you are, but other people somehow allow you access to have an insight into their lives, and you discover different worlds, and it's just very, very enriching.
Hello and welcome to the Documentary Life, a show that sets out to inspire and inform you on how to best live and lead your own documentary life. I'm your host, Chris G. Parkhurst, and this is episode number 110, and it is brought to you by Barong Films, proud creators of documentary film, the Documentary Life podcast, and now our Independent Documentary Filmmaker 101 online course designed to help you fund, make, and distribute your best documentary film. Welcome back to the Documentary Life. How are you, Mr. Lyndon Stone? It's good to have you back on the show.
Good, Chris. It's good to speak again. Enjoy Cambodia?
Yes, Cambodia was great. So great that we're looking to head back here in fairly short order. So thanks for asking in about that. I appreciate that. So Lyndon, we've been talking to you now. I think this will be our third year that we've talked to you. And correct me if I'm wrong here. MDFF this will be its fourth year, correct?
Yeah, it's incredible. It's just a fourth year, Chris. But just in 4 years, how things have changed in the landscape in documentary. It's really interesting.
Yeah, and not only in the landscape of documentary itself, but I just want to stop you there for a minute because MDFF, after only 4 years, you guys have truly become one of the more respected documentary film festivals around. So right at the outset, man, I want to say congratulations. I really do.
Thanks, Chris. I really appreciate that.
And what do you attribute this success to?
I think we had some Australian filmmakers out at Tribeca, and all the filmmakers were coming out to them. What's Melbourne Documentary Film Festival like? And they were talking about them. We've had a lot of submissions from all the major American film festivals and stuff like Tribeca, Big Sky, Sundance. So we get a lot of traffic in submissions from those film festivals. But it's really changed. I think now, I didn't know how big it really was, but when this Australian filmmaker came back from Tribeca, he said, "Lyndon, your festival is huge in America." Yeah. So the whole dynamic of when North America thinks of documentary, they think Melbourne Documentary now. It's incredible. And it comes down to a few things, a few marketing things, a few different things here. I mean, in Australia, it's different. It's antenna, which is in Sydney. And I think probably in Europe, probably the same antenna. But in North America, that's where the majority of the submissions come from. It's actually Melbourne Documentary. And that's an incredible change just in 4 years. Yeah. It's huge. It's really, really big. Yeah.
It's exciting. It's exciting. Can you give me one or two reasons that you can point to that you feel that has happened?
Well, I think, mainly maybe it's probably Film Freeway. They're now the preeminent force. Without a Box is closed down, and Film Freeway has been promoting us. And there's not too many dedicated documentary film festivals in Australia. There's Antenna, obviously, in Sydney. There's in Canberra. There's Stronger Than Fiction. Great people there in Canberra. And then there's us in Melbourne. That's about it. There's the Environmental Film Festival, Transitions Film Festival, Human Rights, but they also go into drama. But other than that, it just unabashedly documentary. There's only really three. And those are the three major ones. We've become, in North America at least, the preeminent force in documentary. It's just incredible how it's changed. Just in 4 years, things can change just like that. So it's really incredible. It's just an incredible ride.
It's been really fun to see, from this end, both as a doc filmmaker and as, the host of this podcast. And certainly because we've had you on almost from the beginning, it's been really exciting to see that. So again, congratulations, Lyndon.
Thanks.
Now this year, Lyndon, what's new or different that you can tell us about this year's MDFF?
Well, this year, I think probably, we were simultaneously, we always try and honor people. We always, we had Bob Hawke from Film Hawk. We've got Chip Monk from Woodstock. So we're always trying to honor people. But in terms of different things, we're doing this new thing called New Voices. So we're trying to find, up-and-coming, emerging filmmakers. We've got a great one from America, from Tribeca, who's done 17 blocks, Davey Robart.
Yeah.
He is absolutely incredible filmmaker. It's almost like 42 and up. It's an incredible documentary. And then obviously we've got all these legendary documentary directors. We've got Barbara Koppel. Isn't that great? Barbara Koppel and Claudio von Planta.
She was on the lineup.
And then Alex Winter as well. He's a bright shining star, an incredibly lovely guy.
Indeed.
And he even recorded a little video for us. What a top guy. He's just a really, really nice guy. But in terms of different categories, we're doing video essays. We're kind of branching out, trying to bring video essay, which I guess is seen as a different genre. Into the documentary fold. And then obviously we do doc web series, which is very progressive, very similar to IDFA, who do doc web series. I think we're the only one down under who does doc web series.
Oh, okay, great.
And I think that's probably a good, another trying to bring people into documentary like we do with documentary photography.
Yes.
So it's just kind of a point of difference, trying to innovate, be progressive. And it's working, and I think it's going incredibly well, and really connecting with a good local audience. It's kind of similar to Hot Docs, it's winter, but still people are coming out in droves. So it's going to be good. Yeah,
that's great. That's great. Now, last year you mentioned trying to do something a little more for the doc filmmakers themselves. Has that transpired in any way this year with MDFF?
Well, I guess, obviously we always try and be a filmmakers film festival. And obviously it's a competition. And it's hard sometimes when people submit and you have to say no. But what we tend to do now is we've done this in the past. I think we're the only festival that do that. We give people a complimentary double pass to come along, So that offsets most, if not all, of their submission fee. People take us up on that offer, and they can come to any film in the festival, and I give them a complimentary double pass to go and see that. So it's kind of trying to be a female-centric festival. We also give people feedback on submissions. We still do that. We're doing a couple of master classes with one lecturer from Swinburne, one lecturer from Monash. One's on making a personal documentary. You had Doug Block on not too long ago. And we're doing one on making Australian music documentaries. Australia makes fantastic music documentaries. They're awesome. Really, really strong in that. And I think that's a key element that can differentiate Australia from other kind of nations, because this Australia's so strong. They're so good at making music documentaries. They're so passionate about it. So well edited, well put together, and all these kind of great little stories or anecdotes that are put into it. So they put a lot of passion to it. You can just see it on the screen.
Fantastic.
I've got a great one called Waiting, the Van Duren Story. And it's just wonderful to see, it's just an indie documentary, just passionately put together, and it's just great. It's just really kinetic, and it really connects with an audience, and it's just great to see that there's so much innate talent in Australia, and it's really wonderful to see and to showcase it. Yeah.
So we are speaking with Claudio von Planta, and his current film, his documentary directorial debut. Of course, he's a well-known DP, and we're speaking with Claudio von Planta, and his film is Chasing the Jet Stream. What can you tell us, Lyndon, about why this particular film film was chosen. What was it about chasing the jet stream that spoke to you?
Well, that's the thing. It's different. Like, it's two documentaries in one. There's a science side, which looks at jet stream technology and how they can revolutionize, the energy crisis around the world. And then there's also the adventure kind of side of it about Mark Hauser, preparing to, jump into the jet stream. And this is one of the first documentaries I had like a kind of focus group watch it, and they actually really liked it. Some of the Australian critics don't quite get it. They're like, what's this guy doing? And it's kind of science. But I like it because it's different. That's why I picked it up. Same with a lot of the films that we have. We try and bring new, kind of left of center kind of documentaries, along as with hard-hitting documentaries, award-winning documentaries. We try to have some stuff that is a little bit left of center, a little bit different. Yeah, I think it's unique, and the focus group loved it. So have you seen it, Chris? Have you watched?
I have. And
what do you think?
We're talking with him momentarily. Yeah, I think it's great. I love that. Of course, I was familiar with Claudio's work as a DP, certainly with the Long Way Round documentary series that he did with Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman. And so I was definitely excited to see it, and I was not let down. And the subject material is, as you said, it is fascinating, both from a scientific or science sort of realm, as well as of course the human element. So Lyndon, as we wrap up here, as we've done our sort of yearly check-in with you, let us know when and how we might be able to attend MDFF. When is MDFF playing this year?
Okay, so it's from 19th to the 30th of July in Cinema Nova, which is in Carlton, and it is also at Backlot, which is in South Bank in central Melbourne. And everyone's welcome to come along. We have a great, diverse range of documentaries, full spectrum of documentaries. So there's really something there for everyone, So we've tried to curate for Melbourne as a whole. And so I think people should go support the indie filmmakers, the people competing, the festival, and have a good time. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I know that I've probably said this now 3 years running, but I will say again, I do look forward to attending one of these years, and hopefully it'll be next year with Elvis of Cambodia. Who knows?
Yeah, it's been absolutely fascinating, Chris. Just like 4 years, just absolutely fascinating documentaries that come in. We've had stuff, from nation states doing PR exercises to shadowy organizations that got a certain agenda to do. We've got all these big celebrities that have got these pet kind of documentary projects they want to premiere in Australia. It's been a fascinating, interesting, never a dull moment, So
I can't wait to meet you in person down the line here and further our discussion. It'll be great.
Yeah, it'd be great. Yeah, you take care, Chris.
And you as well. Thanks a lot, Lyndon. Over the past year, Steph and I have been talking to countless doc filmmakers and finding out their biggest pain points, taking the best of an earlier version of the doc filmmaking platform, formerly known as the Documentary Academy, and taken the best and worst of our own doc filmmaking experiences, and we've created Independent Documentary Filmmaker 101. In Independent Documentary Filmmaker 101, we have targeted 6 specific areas that we believe are the essential non-creative aspects of doc filmmaking. And out of this, we have created 6 robust modules. They are perspective and mindset, pitches and proposals, presence and connection, film finances, film promotion, and film distribution. Now, our approach is simple and straightforward. You start from the beginning of the course, and using our mixture of video and text tutorials, our tailor-made workbooks, MP3s, and some of our industry expert webinars, you work through each module, creating the foundation for an empowered and successful documentary film. If you'd like to learn more about how Independent Documentary Filmmaker 101 can help your film, then visit thedocumentarylife.com/courses. Take it from me, it's one thing to have a great idea for a film and maybe have some of the gear in which to shoot it, but it's an entirely other thing to operate with a real budget, being able to pay your crew and yourself, and to understand the methods of proper audience building or how to promote, market, then distribute your film. If you think that you are ready to start making the kind of documentary film that you can be excited and proud to share with the world, Independent Documentary Filmmaker 101 is the course for you. Check it out today by going to thedocumentarylife.com/courses. We'll see you there. You've probably noticed that we're playing around with some pretty cool fresh sounds on this season of TDL. And I'd like to thank Musicvine for supplying us with those cool fresh sounds. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about how Musicvine might be able to serve your doc project, you can check out the show notes for today's episode, or you can simply go to their website at musicvine.com. Joining us today here on The Documentary Life is Claudio von Planta, one of today's more respected DPs in the world of documentary cinema and television. He may be best known for his work following the actors Ewan McGregor and Charlie Boorman around the globe, from London to New York via motorcycle. But Claudio is also the man behind such adverse works such as Racing Green, The Rape Trade, The Kurdish Dream, and Guns for Hire, that's just to name a few. His latest documentary film, which he also produced and directed and is showing at this year's Melbourne Documentary Film Festival, is Chasing the Jet Stream, a film that follows the adventures of Mark Hauser from Switzerland, who wants to be the first skydiver in the world to jump into the jet stream. Claudio, welcome to The Documentary Life. Very excited to have this conversation with you.
Yes, thank you very much for the invitation.
It is my pleasure. So Claudio, I'm curious for you, when did documentary as a genre, when did documentary film start for you?
Yeah, I somehow just stumbled into it. It wasn't really planned. And it started in 1985. And at the time I was studying in Zurich political science. And during my first university holidays, I felt it would be cool to do something more hands-on than just reading books and going to seminars. And I thought, what could I do? Maybe the production of a little news report would be cool. I had never done anything like it. I just played around with Super 8 cameras when I was still at school. Mm-hmm. And I was technically always interested, and it felt it can't be that complicated. And if you watch the news and you analyze a little bit how these news reports are put together, I felt it's not rocket science. You should be able to do it. But I didn't go to any film school, nothing. I just thought if I pick up my little Super 8 camera, I just need to go to an exciting place, a little bit off the beaten track, and then see, how far I get. Mm. And then at the time in 85, the whole news media was focusing mainly on the conflicts in Latin America, Nicaragua, El Salvador, places like that.
Yeah, I remember it well.
And I thought, so I definitely shouldn't go there. There's too much competition. I need to go further away. And so I decided to go to Afghanistan. Because in Afghanistan, you already had, for a few years war. The Russians, the Soviets invaded in 79. So when I went there in 85, they had 6 years of war. They had already loads of refugees in Pakistan and in Iran. But we had hardly any information about this. Yeah. This was before the internet, before everything. And I thought maybe that's a place where I could do something. And generally, I always tried to find a career which gives me a pretext to travel, to get out of Switzerland. I was just bored sitting in Switzerland. Yeah. I wanted to see the bigger world, and I thought journalism could be, a good direction. But I was a little bit dyslexic and always felt handicapped with writing, and therefore I thought maybe something more focused on vision and sound that could be good. And that's why I, right from the beginning, picked up a camera. And then on this trip in Afghanistan, which was pretty crazy because I really had no experience, nothing. The one thing I had some very good military training in Switzerland, because everybody has to do military service in Switzerland. And I was with mountain grenadiers, and I had some really very useful skills and training, for survival, and as well the training with weapons and ammunitions and explosives and everything was very useful later on in my career when I ended up in conflict zones. So I was not completely stupid, but so I realized I'm not too anxious about the kind of the military side, the conflict side, but on the media side, documentary filmmaking, I had no clue at all. Somehow I survived, and I came back with some footage, and I could sell it eventually to French television in Paris for a little news feature in the evening news. And then at the end, once that story went out, the editor of the program asked me, so what's next? What are your plans? And I say, I need to go back to university in Switzerland.
You got to get back to school.
My studies. And he said, are you serious? This is not too boring. We need people like you who have some guts to go to difficult places. Yeah. And don't you want to go back? We give you an assignment.
Wow.
So basically, that was my entry, straight foot into the door with the TV industry. And I never went back to university. And that was the way how I ended up with documentary. And it's really, it just completely fitted my character, my personality. I really just by chance, I stumbled into it. I just realized this, particularly running around with a camera is the aspect which I like most, which is very close to my own instincts. It's like hunting. It feels it's quite basic with, it's close to our basic instincts. It's like hunting, and as in Stone Age, we knew we had to go out and we have to hunt and we can't come back before we had a prey. And with documentary filmmaking is a little bit the same. You just know you need to be on the case, and it has to, you can't come back empty-handed. And instead of having, a bow and an arrow or a gun, you just have a camera. But the approach is very similar.
Well, Claudio, I feel like you may even be sort of underrepresenting it yourself in a little way, because I would say that documentary didn't accidentally happen for you, right? I believe that these callings happen for a reason, and I feel like that you may feel a similar way. I think you recognized a door opened, right, Claudio? A door opened for you, and you recognized that it was more to your character, as you had said, and you followed that door, and it opened up, this whole world to you. Whereas it's kind of like doc filmmaking itself. When you're working on a project, there are certain doors that will open up in storylines and threads. And it's up for you to decide which doors you want to go through and which threads you want to follow. There are times where if you're not open to those doors, then you may miss a whole aspect to your story or a critical character potentially in your film. I think it's something similar in our lives when the certain doors open up. In your case, you recognized again that it was more to your liking and more to your character, and that's what sent you in the way of shooting with a camera and in the way of documentary.
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite good to be in touch with your emotions and your passion, and you need to accept that certain things are just better suited for your character than others. And it definitely, in my case, it just felt, sitting in a bench in a university, it's just so abstract, and I felt much more alive in this situation in Afghanistan, in the middle of a crazy place. With Afghan Mujahideens. Effectively, they were the same guys like today Taliban.
That's
right. The same people. They just call themselves different, but the mentality was the same, and it was so extreme as a contrast to my sheltered life in Switzerland. Yeah. And I was just fascinated. I right from the beginning, I think one of the things which is key to my passion about documentary is the contrast. And and you dive into the life of other people, and it has nothing to do with yourself, nothing to do with your own character, with your own background. It's completely irrelevant who you are, but other people somehow allow you access to have an insight into their lives, and you discover different worlds, and it's just very, very enriching. And I imagine, I always sometimes ask myself, maybe for actors, there must be an element like that, where, suddenly they are on stage and they have to play a character which has nothing to do with themselves, and they can just be somebody else. And it's very liberating, because suddenly you're not kind of like in that prison of your own personality. And for documentary filmmaking, it's more the observer position, which I like.
Well, speaking of actors, you worked with two pretty well-known actors in Ewan McGregor and Charlie Boorman, and it's work that maybe you're a bit certainly known for in terms of your name being attached to a project, and that was the Long Way Round series. Can you tell us briefly what the Long Way Round series was about and how you were how that project came to be for you?
Yes, it was very strange. I think it's the only job ever I had completely out of the blue. Totally out of the blue. It was just a phone call from a researcher who worked for that production. And they basically had these two actors, Ewan McGregor and Charlie Boorman. They both into motorbikes, and they had the idea of organizing a big trip. And eventually came to the conclusion they actually should try and drive around the world. Therefore, Long Way Round. Starting in the UK, going east in the northern hemisphere, across Europe, then all the former Soviet countries, eventually through Siberia to Magadan, and then fly across to Anchorage in Alaska, and then drive across North America to New York. Yeah. That was their plan. And they apparently, like 2 weeks before departure, they still didn't have a suitable cameraman who could be on a third bike, because they had two bikes and there was a third bike for somebody who should film. And so they interviewed loads of people, but usually they had, I'm sure they have spoken to top very experienced people, but often they said, yeah, but you need a sound recordist, you need somebody for lighting, and it was always too complicated. They said, no, you need somebody, just one guy who runs like a one-man show. He can be on the third bike, and there's no other option.
You need a doc filmmaker.
Yeah, so somehow a researcher found my website and called me up, and I went to see them. And apparently within 5 minutes, or very quickly when they spoke to me, they decided, yeah, that's the guy.
That's the guy.
And the main reason was simply the fact that I said, yeah, no problem, I can do this on my own. And that's a skill which I learned, particularly in conflict zones where you can't rock up with a whole team.
No.
You have to be able to do everything on your own. You have to, go under the radar, maybe sometimes across borders illegally. You need to pretend to be a tourist. You have a mini little tiny camera. You don't have a huge big camera which looks impressive. No. You always have to underplay your role so people don't even realize what you're doing. And so that was the beginning of my career in tricky places. Yeah. And then it was useful for Long Way Round as well.
We're going to ride 20,000 miles in 115 days through 12 countries. Europe, Kazakhstan and Mongolia, and then ride the Road of Bones in Far Eastern Russia. And we're going to fly to Alaska and go through Canada, America, and New York.
Claudio, I'd like to mention something that you said earlier that really struck me, and it's this idea of having almost a hunter's instinct with your camera operation. Now, my question for you about that, Claudia, is that something, can other doc filmmakers, can they develop that sort of instinct, or do you think that's the sort of a personality trait that you may or may not have or embody, or is it something that you can kind of practice and kind of develop on your own?
No, I never thought about it, but maybe it's part of your personality. Either you have it or you don't.
Yeah.
Like some people are just very musical.
Yeah. And
some others, they could train forever. They will never be musical because they just don't have the ear for it. Because that hunting instinct, as I say, it's really, it taps into, basic instincts. It needs to be very deep down, and it needs to, it takes so much energy to stay on a story for a long time. And I think even, the films you are making, you seem to spend a lot of time as well on these stories, sometimes years. And you really need to be obsessed to have the stamina to do this. And, somebody who is just short-tempered and, little attention span, never, ever, ever they could do this. It would just feel totally silly to them. Why should you stay on a stupid story for such a long time where you're not even sure whether it has ever an interesting ending.
Yeah, right. Where it's going to end up.
It's always huge as well. You need to be, you need to accept risks. It's not a feature film where you can plan the storyline. On a documentary, you always hope there is an interesting storyline, but if you're unlucky, it might fall apart.
Yeah.
And so even stories with Long Way Round, if you take that example, it's easy to see the storyline. You need to start from in London, and you want to get around the world with motorbikes.
And
so
New York,
hopefully you will get there.
Yeah.
Because if let's say you have an accident halfway, then the story isn't really that exciting anymore.
Right.
And you probably you could still make a story until, the sad end, there's an accident. But it wouldn't be, people wouldn't be that much interested, most likely. And so that's with every documentary. You have a vision what the goal should be, but you're never sure whether it actually happens.
Well, another film that you have spent some time on yourself and where you don't necessarily know how it will end up, although you certainly have a hope, and so does the main character, how it may end up, is the current film Chasing the Jet Stream, which is making its way around film festivals. Now, this is a film that you produced as well as directed and shot. Again, the film is Chasing the Jet Stream. Claudio, tell us a little bit about the film and where the idea came from for you.
Yeah, this is a perfect example of the type of stories I like to follow. And usually these stories, they come out of the blue. A little bit like Long Way Round, where I just got a telephone call from some desperate producers who needed a cameraman to jump on a third bike to follow Ewan and Charlie. Fortunately, that Long Way Round story worked well and became quite famous. And so lots of people somehow heard about my name because my association with Long Way Round. And so since then, so that was like 2004 was the first story, Long Way Round, and 2007 we did Long Way Down.
Yeah.
And since then, I often have people calling me up, other adventurers who want to do expeditions, something big, which is quite cool because you already have people who actually want to be filmed. So you don't have for it to win their trust. They are looking for somebody who will capture their story, whatever it is. And so the Chasing the Jet Stream story was exactly based on that. You have this Swiss entrepreneur skydiver, Mark Hauser, who is passionate about flying all his life. He was in planes and gliders, and he got into skydiving and parachuting, all sorts of things. And he's a very kind of has an incredible mind, very creative. And he somehow came up with this idea that he wants to be the first guy to jump into the jet stream. These are these huge, strong winds which go around the world at altitudes of 8,000 to 12,000 meters. And so, commercial airplanes are using it for tailwind to use less fuel because it has just this incredible power. These winds can go up to 380 kilometers per hour, so really fast, enormous energy potential. And so because of his passion of flying, he thought it would be cool to see whether you can do that. And in addition, he thought, why are we not using this energy?
Yeah.
Because it's the perfect renewable clean energy, whilst we all wondering, what can we do? How can we replace fuel and carbon for energy resources? What should we do? Solar or wind or whatever. But nobody ever looked really at high altitude winds, which are absolutely incredible sources of energy. So he had this idea to combine both. He stunt to make a record, use it to win attention for high altitude wind power.
Right.
It's a clean energy source. So I had no clue about skydiving, no clue about high altitude wind energy. I had no clue about anything. But, that story is a perfect example how through the making of a documentary, you learn all sorts of new things. So it's just a very good way of having new insights, learning new things about our world. So Mark Hauser, he just called me up one day. I went to meet him in a restaurant in Bern, the capital of Switzerland. And on a paper napkin on the table over lunch, he was just drawing me some basic diagrams about the jet stream and his crazy idea, and said, wow, this is a perfect story, absolutely crazy. But that's what you need. You need a character who is driven, and hopefully he will succeed, and not and he came across as a guy who thought about it a long time, and so I felt it's worthwhile to take a risk to work with him.
And conversely, he needs someone who's crazy enough and willing to go out on a limb with his story to be able to tell that story. And that's why he met with you.
Yeah. Because that's often the fundamental issue with documentary filmmaker.
Yeah.
If you try to sell a film to TV or to commercial organizations, they always want to make sure it will be a success. Because otherwise, the editors, whoever, or the managers who are responsible for these programs, they will lose their jobs if they commission stories which fail and and never come to a conclusion.
Right.
So they are so anxious always to know that whatever they commission will be a success. And then the other thing is they often want to be in the trend, politically or whatever, so that it fits the current trend. And so if you come with topics which are at the moment not in the headlines anywhere in the media, they are bought. It could be the most incredible story, but if it's not trendy at the moment, they don't even look at it.
Right.
And my stories, the ones where I know I will find the energy to make the best out of it, is always depending on characters. I don't really care what the story is, as long as I have a character which is driven and passionate with an amazing idea. That's the key for what I'm looking for. So a guy like Mark Hauser is the perfect example. He comes with a crazy idea, has no idea how long it will take him to get to the jet stream, whether it's even possible. He thinks it's feasible, but everybody tells him you are crazy, you can't do that. It will be suicide. But then just talking to him, I realized the guy is highly intelligent. He really has enormous experience with anything to do with aviation and flying, and physics and meteorology and everything. So I felt it's worthwhile to take a risk. And I like these characters who are out of the norm. And so the problem is, if you then try and sell a story like that, commissioning editors, they panic because you can't guarantee that it will work.
That's right.
And so they stay away from it. But I once in a while, so every few years, I like to do this type of stories just on my own steam. And usually hardly any budgets, because I can say my time and my skills, I can put it in as an investment. There is no money, no budget. As long as we find a little bit of budgets to cover expenses and flights, I'm happy to work on that basis. And so, obviously, it's a risky approach commercially. Can't really earn a living with that. It's very risky. But once in a while, I like to do it because it's actually, from my point of view, that's the true, real, proper documentary approach.
I'm going to ask you another sort of practical question as a doc filmmaker, and this is more of a budgetary type of question. I know in this conversation you had mentioned, like with a film like Chasing the Jet Stream, maybe it's more of a passion project, and so you're putting up a lot of the budget. But it seems like there's potential in a film like this for a lot of sponsorship types of budget. Was that a part of your plan with this film? Did you get involved with that at all to raise funding?
Yeah, it's actually very interesting. I feel the whole market for filmmakers is changing very fast. I started off with, as I explained, little news reports about Afghanistan in '85, and then more and more I realized everything I do is for TV, and I managed to then find connections with the TV industry in the UK, which was more interesting than in the rest of Europe, because the English-speaking market was bigger, and there was an appetite for freelancers at the time in the 90s. And then at the beginning, it was actually a handicap to say, yeah, I'm a one-man show. I can do everything a little. Like for you, it was the same. It was a handicap because at the time when I started in the UK from 1990 onwards, people were still used to work with big crews. There was a director, there was a cameraman, a sound recordist, an assistant, all sorts of people, and it didn't fit into the industry. Just having one guy, and then only later on, maybe from 2000 onwards, when the TV budgets came down, suddenly it became interesting to find multi-skilled people. That's how I got the long way round job.
Yeah, right.
I was multi-skilled, and so. Now, in budget terms, at the time, it was still mainly, most of my work was always for TV. And then suddenly, with the start of online streaming and YouTube and distribution over the internet, TV stations, they started to struggle even more. And you had even less budgets.
Yeah.
And then I realized they don't even have the guts anymore to invest in proper research.
No.
And everybody expects you now to shoot a film, 2 maximum 3 weeks, and then to edit in 2-3 weeks. If you shoot the film for let's say Al Jazeera, if anything that takes more time than 2-3 weeks shoot and 2-3 weeks edit, they're not even interested in. Yeah. They are not even looking at it because they know they couldn't justify the budgets for it.
Right.
And that's when I started to say, look, at least once in a while, sometimes I can do these commercial projects, but it's always annoying because with more time you could do something more interesting and better.
God, yeah.
And then once in a while, I said, I'm doing a film on my own, and I don't care how long it takes. I just do it. And then with Jetstream, chasing the Jetstream, the first thing was I knocked at the door of BBC World News TV because I did stories for them before. And I know they don't really. So that's the commercial arm of the BBC,
right?
Which means they have much less money than terrestrial BBC, where they are financed by license fee. The commercial arm, BBC World News, they don't have the license fee. They need to generate the cash through advertising. And that's very difficult. So they don't have that much cash, but they have a huge market. They cover the whole world. And I know through them I could get an interesting global outlet, reaching, still huge audience. Based on that, they basically give you a little paper saying, yes, if you manage to get that story off the ground, if that guy seriously manages to get into the jet stream, we would love to see the film, and we'll show it and pay you a little license fee, royalty, to have exclusivity for 1 week or a month or something like that. So it's not a guarantee. You have no upfront cash, you have nothing, but you have a little bit of something already kind of prepared the ground that potentially there is an interesting outlet where you can reach a big audience. And with that paper, you can then go around and try and find sponsors saying, look, by the way, we're doing this film, potentially it will be on BBC World, and so hopefully you will win some interest. And so we tried to do it with Jetstream Superman. First, we called it Jetstream Superman before, and then we changed it later to Chasing the Jetstream. So we tried it with this film and had absolutely no luck.
Oh,
because
wow.
Even sponsors, all these massive big companies around the world, it's too risky. They don't want to be involved in something where they are not sure it will work. It's.
Was there fear behind that, Claudio, in terms of like this could be disastrous and we don't want to be attached to something?
Maybe that, and the managers who would be responsible in the marketing departments to put money on a story like that.
Yeah.
They are probably anxious about their jobs. Yep. If something goes wrong, then somebody will turn against them. How could you have been so crazy
to support this? Yeah.
Yeah. To put money on a crazy roulette game.
Oh.
And so it didn't work. And so then we said, okay, let's do something else. We try crowdfunding.
Yes.
And so that's the very first time I tried crowdfunding. And I didn't have illusions about it.
Okay.
That, suddenly you'll have thousands of people who will pay a $5 or a $10 for your film. I think the companies who run crowdfunding platforms, they just do it for a business.
Right.
And, they don't care where the money comes from. They just want to have as many projects as possible and
of course
get their little cut from everything.
Right.
But I said, look, before we ask too many questions, we should just try and do it once. And then I had an interesting, and the one thing on the crowdfunding platforms, in the help files, what they tell you, you should make sure up front, before you even launch your campaign, you should make sure that you have some friends and families who guarantee you to pledge money as quickly as possible within the first three days or a week to cover already like 20-30% of your final goal.
Right.
Because then that looks good,
Yep.
and it might attract more people behind.
Right. There's a formula to it. We talk about it all the time in the show. Yep.
Yeah. So you basically, that's exactly what we did. So we called around. So we made a few calls, and we knew we can cover the kind of the money quite quickly. So we were asking for $80,000, and I knew we will never get it. I chose the formula where whatever comes in, you keep it. You don't. It's not like everything or nothing.
Yeah.
You have these two options. So we used the Indiegogo, where you have the option to say whatever comes in, we take it. And so we made sure we get to the 20,000 mark as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Effectively, friends and family.
Yeah.
People already personally.
Yeah.
So they pledged money, and then on the back of that, you have a few more, but it was minimal. It was really, you shouldn't have illusions about it.
Yeah.
We had all in all, we had like 50 or 60 people backing it.
Yeah.
It's really minimal.
Okay.
And 10 out of the 50, they covered the 20,000 at the beginning.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So that's the reality of crowdfunding. But then there was something very interesting, which I didn't expect, and that's an interesting angle. Within my email shots, which I put out to everybody on my list, I have maybe 3,000 contacts.
Yeah.
So everybody gets hit by my email shots, whether they like it or not, they just get it. And then in that list, obviously, there's a link to our crowdfunding campaign with a little trailer from Mark explaining what he intends to do.
Yeah.
And so on my email list, there were 2 people who worked for financial institutions. One in a private bank in Switzerland, and another one a asset management company in Zurich. And so they were just friends of mine. And they said, "Oh, cool story. Claudio is doing something crazy again. Very curious to find out how that will work." And so they then sent it internally to their marketing departments in their companies, saying, "Look, I have a friend, he's doing this crazy film. Don't you think this could be interesting for our company?" And then suddenly I got a call from these marketing people, calling up saying, we got this link, doing an interesting story, can we talk? So I suddenly had, before we tried, for weeks and weeks and weeks, we tried to call and get in touch with marketing peoples of all these companies, blah, blah, blah. Absolutely. Spend so much time and much energy, and it's absolutely pointless. And then at the end, we actually got some really good sponsorship, but again, through the back doors, through personal connections. But crowdfunding was essential to open that back door.
That's right. And I'll add to that, Claudio. I would argue that you said that, meeting with a bunch of these people prior to that was pointless. I would argue that it wasn't, in the same way that crowdfunding was effective for you. And it's that if you didn't have that practice prior to that, and so if you didn't have the materials ready and you didn't know what your discussion points were going to be from having had the practice where it didn't work with people that you met with that didn't want to maybe sponsor the film. If you didn't have that, you may not have been as successful for the people that came to you that wanted to support your film. I would say so it wasn't pointless. I would say all of that practice and all of that preparation that you put in prior to that was absolutely essential for putting into place the success when the banks came, that this particular bank and marketing team came to you and said, "Hey, we'd like to support your film."
Yeah, it was actually, no, you're absolutely right. Maybe one other aspect is key. that I hate all this marketing. I really don't like it. I find it so tiring.
I'm sure you and me both.
But and I think it's for most filmmakers, for most creative people, it's like one aspect. It just goes against the grain.
Yeah.
But here, the essential was the drive of Mark, because it was not my story. It's his story. He wanted to do this. So he did most of the legwork for all this, all these connections with sponsors. So he was the key to push it, and even to win it, win the support eventually through the back door.
Yep.
What these marketing people from these two financial institutions wanted to see: who is this main protagonist? If he would have been very boring, even though they might known me, still nothing would have happened. But the key was that Mark himself, he is just a very interesting character, and so they felt, he was essential to eventually win that sponsorship support.
We're talking about Claudio von Planta's latest documentary film, Chasing the Jet Stream. And Chasing the Jet Stream is showing at this month's MDFF, Melbourne Documentary Film Festival. Claudio, I'd like to ask you, what do you know about MDFF and what do you know about Melbourne Documentary Film Festival? And maybe why did you feel like this was an important festival to be a part of?
I actually don't know much about film festivals, because so far I was always spoiled, because most of my film went just straight to TV.
Yeah, right.
And then once films have been in TV, most festivals were not interested anyway. Because they are keen to have premieres and be the first where the films are shown and whatever. And so I was never really looking much into the festival scene. And only now recently, since I realized I want to do more totally independent films, no commissions, then I discovered that today we have loads of festivals all around the world, and I felt we should definitely try and see whether anybody is interested in what we are doing. And we were very pleased because the story with Chasing the Jet Stream, at the beginning we tried to do the jump over Switzerland, over the Swiss Alps.
Right.
And it didn't work because of bad weather. We waited the whole winter from 2017 to 2018, and we just didn't have a single day where we could do it. And so we then realized, shall we wait again for a whole year for the next winter in Switzerland, or is there another option? And so Mark immediately felt, no, we just need to go somewhere else where there's winter, because in winter the jet streams are lower down and they are faster.
Yeah.
And that's where Australia came into the picture. and suddenly we were looking at Australia, and eventually we succeeded to do it in Australia.
Yeah.
And it was really cool that the Melbourne Documentary Festival, they were the first who were interested in the story.
Fantastic.
And it just fits nicely, because we really, the film came to a conclusion in Australia. And the key figure, that's another reason why Melbourne is such a good place.
Yeah.
The key figure who made it possible that we actually could do it in Australia was a Melbourne-based jet pilot.
That's right.
So it's really cool that the film will be shown in Melbourne, because that was our base to kind of start the project on the Australian side of the story.
Claudio, as we wrap up this conversation today here in the Documentary Life, I'm curious if in this conversation, if anything has come up that you felt like you wanted to impart or share with our doc filmmaking audience. Are there any sort of final words of wisdom you might be able to leave us with?
You can only focus on documentary filmmaking if you have a real passion for it, because it can be very tricky, very risky, can take a long time, and many people around you might say this will never work, but you just need to stick with it. You need to have that energy to stick with it, and it only comes with a real passion. And very often it's not commercial, and lots of people think they would probably give up if they just think it's unreasonable, because you don't really earn a living with it. If you're lucky, you can earn a living, but it shouldn't be your first focus.
We've been speaking with documentary filmmaker and DP extraordinaire Claudio von Planta. His current film is Chasing the Jet Stream. Claudio, this has been an absolutely exhilarating conversation. Dare I say, it is taking us to far heights, great heights. So thank you so much for having this conversation with us, Claudio. Thank you so much for being on the Documentary Life.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
And don't forget, if you're interested in possible enrollment in our Independent Documentary Filmmaker 101 course, and you'd like to see if it might be a fit for you, head on over to thedocumentarylife.com/courses. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time, Doc Lifer. Thanks again for listening to the show, and remember to like and subscribe to this channel. Also, remember, for any of the URLs that may or may not be outdated and you want to get the most up-to-date information, perhaps for the documentary filmmaking courses, for the blog, for other episodes, just go ahead and check in the show notes below on this YouTube page, and that'll give you the correct URLs to use. Thanks again. Have a great day.